company calls you and says, all right, I broke away from my other law firm and I'm taking a couple admin people. It's me, another attorney, and 2 admin people. What's next?
That's actually a really common. That's funny that you went in with that. That is a very common scenario. We get definitely these very mature, seasoned, large firm attorneys, built a career, very vibrant career on a huge law firm, and for whatever reason they want to finish their career with their own firm. And that's a
Yeah,
call that we get quite often, actually.
yeah, which happens a lot in our industry too, and it's the barriers of entry have just really shrunk to be almost non-existent. I mean, the office space, paying 20 grand for a new server, all those sort of things that you used to get maybe 5 or 10 years ago. It's just too easy to spin up your own. It happens a lot in the RIA space.
Yeah, I call it business in a box. That was a term that was floating
Yeah.
around a few years ago. I still kind of like it, because
Yeah.
you can kind of say like, okay, your business can be in a box, literally. Okay, we need phones, we need computers, we need software, we need people, and and then you need a place, And
Yep.
actually now you don't even need a place if you're really shrewd or very, if shrewd, I guess would be the one word to say it. But if you're if you're clever enough that you want to, I'm one of those resources. We had an office in Hartford forever. We do maintain an office in Hartford when we need it, but otherwise our 100% work product is done remotely.
Yeah. So I'm gonna interrupt you there as I'm
Sure.
curious about stuff. So 100% virtual law firms. Do you see a lot of those? Is it newer? Are they apprehensive about that?
So we're only 10 days into this year. So last year I saw a few call me and said we want to spin up a virtual law firm. And I was really excited about that call because that's what I'm doing with my IT company. There's so much power to it. You can be anywhere your clients are. The personal benefit, I cannot be overstated. It's, you're home for the kids, but then, you're still having conference calls and you're having meetings. During COVID, court was actually done in Teams meetings. The court was hosting Teams hearings. So it's just the legacy of, everybody driving into their law office to, is just unnecessary if you build a culture that doesn't do that. The courts want the firms to go paperless. So you're already coming up with workflows to produce digital paper rather than printed paper. So it's kind of ripe for that framework, and then there's really, there's companies. You ever heard of Regis?
Sure.
So, there's, and WeWork, that famous company that kind of was marred by their flamboyant startup leader. I forgot what his name, Adam. What was his name? Adam.
I don't know. I didn't watch that documentary. It's on my list.
It was pretty good. But anyways,
not really a full-on documentary, right? What do they call those that are sort of mixed?
Docudrama, whatever.
Yeah, docudrama, docuseries, whatever.
Yeah. So anyways, these virtual offices powered by Regis, WeWork, it just facilitates that. And it was like in the tech industry, we call it, there's a term we use that we see a lot called convergence. The cell phone, the smartphone was a convergence of high density batteries, robust Wi-Fi networks, robust data supported cellular networks. I mean, when the iPhone first came out, it was on 2G, if you remember that. And then the 3G iPhone was really big because that was when data was really coming online. Right. Back then, I don't know if you remember, but you couldn't. Are you on Verizon or AT&T?
AT&T.
So I've been on Verizon forever, and back then when the iPhone came out, it launched on AT&T because AT&T supported kind of true data. So like you can be on the phone and still like an email would come into the phone. So like,
yes,
Verizon at that time when the iPhone launched, you could not get email. You would not be receiving data while you were on a phone call, So convergence is a thing. So It's when like all of these technologies kind of come together at the right point to give you something new and powerful. And that's what Business in a Box. That's when Business in a Box came out. Is when you could order your phone service through a web browser.
Yeah.
If you go to ringcentral.com, which is one of the services we recommend
Mhm.
regularly. If you go to ringcentral.com, you can buy a phone service, and then you download the app on your mobile,
Yep.
and you don't need. I remember years ago wiring offices for phones.
Sure. Yeah.
And then calling the local cable company or phone company to bring the dial tone into the data closet, and
Mhm.
then we'd patch the dial tone into their local phone system in the closet that would then distribute dial tone and extensions across everybody's desks.
Yeah.
And then with hosted telephony, they call it VoIP, voice
Mhm.
over IP. You just don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah.
You just need internet, and now your phones are everywhere. Is that your
Yeah.
phone system?
Yeah, that's yeah, Ring
Yeah, is that
Central.
Ring Central?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and text, and it's archived, and
yeah. So
video, and all that stuff, yeah.
So then, we've made a lot of money over managing servers in that closet, which hosted databases, which ran
Mhm.
software to run the business.
Mhm.
And over the last 10 years, all of that went up to the web. And I say web specifically because the web is on the cloud. The cloud is just the internet.
Yeah.
And I've talked about this ad nauseum, but I'm trying to make this distinction that the cloud and the web are both on the internet, but the web is an application. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we run our entire business in a web browser. Everything I'm looking at you in a web browser. My emails
Right.
in a web browser. My phone's in a web browser. Our business management tools in a web browser. This computer that I'm on has no local data.
Right.
And so now if your entire IT infrastructure is in a web browser, and you have your phone in a web browser, and your software is in a web browser, and your billing is in a web browser, your documents are in a web browser, um, and your office is in a web browser, right? So
Mhm.
Regis, you go to regis.com, you say, yeah, let me rent a mailbox at your location, and that now becomes your office location.
Mhm.
And per that relationship, if you need a conference room for an hour, you just go onto the web, you book the conference room, and all of your resources can go in there, have a very professional experience walking in there using that conference room. And by the way, if you want to host a client in Stamford or New York City or Boston, Regis is everywhere. So I'm kind of off the rails, but you asked me about kind of startups,
Yeah.
right? And
So I'm thinking about how it relates back to our industry too. I mean, I think that was kind of a trend pre-COVID, is the term breakaway advisor. There is actually even a company called RIA in a box, which stands for Registered Investment Advisor. So there is that.
RIA in a box. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, so that's you're in a box theme, but yeah, I mean, that's definitely a trend. So along the same lines as the attorneys. I didn't know if the the legal world was a little more stuffy, and we got to be
Still
on Main
stuffy.
Street. We got to be on Main Street with the old house with the white sign and the black lettering type of
Still
thing.
very
But
much that. Still very
yeah.
much that. So yeah, to tie it back in, thanks for bringing me back to earth here. But yes, we did see a number of law firms call us and say, we want to run a virtual law firm. Can you help us get
Mhm.
it up? I was really thrilled to do that and set them up in all these systems. Really excited to do that, but still overwhelmingly, and I mean, I'm a millennial, so I'll be 40 in March. I have friends. I've developed quite a few friends that are lawyers because it's through business and through my time spending in the legal industry, advising that pool of people. A lot of people my age still want to go into the office,
Yeah.
still want to go into court rather than these virtual hearings. So, I'm a technologist, so that's why I feel so strongly about using the technology. But I want, it's going to be interesting to see what the landscape looks like in 10 years from now.
Mhm.
Using a round number, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 7, but in 10 years from now, when um, people 10 years are junior, so the 30 somethings that are
Mhm.
definitely starting their law firms and getting going, um, what are they going to do? Are they going to do the business in a box? Are they going to do the law firm in a box where the work is what matters, not the what your
Yeah.
lobby looks like, but you can still get that lobby experience, that secretary experience. You still get all that in these
Right.
Regis locations.
Yep.
So it's going to be interesting to see how that pivots.
Right. And I mean, you wonder if it's some of these things you think, is it an age thing? Is it a generational thing? Right. Because they're not the same. I think
Or
about that.
let's face it, is it a work thing? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not an attorney, so does the work necessitate that physical location? Is
Mhm.
it really that important? Is conducting a trial in the real really that important?
Mhm.
I can't speak for that because I'm not an attorney, but
Right. And then
that
there's of course, the marketing and the client acquisition, and if you're awash with cash and whatever, and you're like, well, I can get an office downtown for $1,000 a month and stick a sign out, and it's cost me almost nothing. Even if I never show up, the signage will pay for itself. I'll get one client a month from that alone, which will more than pay for it. So there's that aspect too, which I can appreciate, because I've thought about that myself as well. Like, am I losing clients because I don't have an office? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, is that an investment? Is it from a marketing standpoint, sticking a sign out somewhere, even if I never went, would it be worth it? So,
Well, and there's another consideration too. Like when we went decentralized, that's the term I prefer is
mm,
decentralized rather than remote. But it is synonymous, I suppose. The other consideration is employee acquisition.
yeah.
Some employees, when we decentralized in 2017,
Hmm.
we had a number of employees who pushed back against the model. They
Hmm.
wanted to drive to work. They wanted that. They wanted to listen to their podcast in the car for
Yeah.
the half an hour on the way in and on the way out. And honestly, what's funny is that our culture grew away from that, and those resources that didn't like that, they ended up moving on their own.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah. And I mean, there is something to that. I mean, if I were probably to design something, it would be like a 15 to 20-minute commute with no guaranteed, no traffic, no lights, something like that would be kind of, because there is something to that. I mean, there's certain times where my wife will pick my son up from daycare usually, but then there's other days where it's like, dude, I haven't been out of the house. I've been in front of my computer all day. I haven't, if it's a rainy day and I didn't go for a walk or whatever, it's like I have to get in the house and get in the car to change my line of sight to, just see what's going on in the world. So there
my
is something to that.
the typical experience for the startup or the breakaway business, we look at them and we just show them that they can run an entire office in a box, in a web browser, from kind of run their entire business function, you leveraging remote and web-based technologies. But that doesn't preclude them from having an office.
Hmm.
They can still run a traditional office with traditional handset phones on the desk and traditional computers and office owned computers, and the staff and the workflow can very much be traditional, but the tool set is just modern.
Right.
And the added benefit of that is when Susie Paralegal is homesick or has something, but she can work in some capacity, she works from home. And
Yeah.
she's empowered to do that. Her phone follows her software follows her, the data follows her, and the workflow changes very little. The attorney has a beach house. I see it all the time. The attorney has a beach house down in Niantic or Milford and wants to do some work over the weekend or a
Mhm.
3-day or 4-day weekend. And same thing, the tool set follows them to that remote site. Or an associate they want to spool up an associate as a contingent or a bolt on to their firm and maintain a second office, air quotes again, second office
Mhm.
at a different in a different town. Having all of your tool sets in the cloud in a box, so to speak,
Yeah.
just facilitates that. And we've been providing remote access and remote functionality to firms for the last 10, 15 years. But when you pivot to web technologies, It
Hmm.
really supercharges that, really brings the IT costs, the support costs down because it's highly functional, the data is highly available. Um, very little kind of pre-set up IT stuff,
Right, and a lot of times, even in their physical location, it's still almost like a remote location, right? I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
they may have a laptop that they plug in at home to a couple monitors and a keyboard and whatever, and then when they go in the office, they do the same thing, and they have mirrored technology and whatever. So,
Exactly. I mean,
uh,
we used to say that the office needed to be hardwired because most of them were running local databases. And so
mhm,
the best way to connect to your database back in the day when it was like Access or SQL, you needed a hardwired connection for the best reliability of the database. And so you don't crash
yeah,
the database if there's a continuity issue. But the web is inherently a wireless supported
mhm,
technology. The way that the data moves back and forth from your computer to the web server um, is 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 so well suited for a high latency or wireless air quotes again wireless connection because I guess the data set that you're looking at while you're in the browser is constantly like scoped. It's like here's the data you called for, boom, and then like you can have interruption in your like you could have static in the line, so to speak, and
yeah,
it's like email. You know what I mean?
mhm,
Email doesn't require a high bandwidth, high low latency connection because it's like the system's like, did I get an email? Yep, here's a new email, and then the connection is like low data, so to speak. So yeah,
yeah.
just to
If
put a
you're at
bow on it.
home, yeah, if you're working from home now and your database is on AWS or Azure or wherever in Colorado, it's faster than 5 years ago when you were connecting to your database that's in your server room 20 feet away. Just
Yeah,
because what you have locally is never going to be as fast as the stuff that's working remotely anyway. So
right.